Imagine looking into your grandchild's eyes and sensing something unexplainable, as if that soul had been a part of your life even before birth. Many older adults report feeling a deep, immediate connection with certain grandchildren, something that goes beyond ordinary family love. What if this feeling had an explanation that traditional science doesn't yet grasp, but which new spiritual investigations are beginning to reveal? In various regression sessions conducted with volunteers around the world, stories emerge pointing to a surprising pattern: grandchildren who chose their own grandparents before being born, not as a biological accident, but as part of a larger agreement, made in another dimension of existence. This might seem strange at first glance, but there are consistent and recurring accounts that deserve careful, open-minded observation. For decades, consciousness scholars and regression researchers have observed that many souls, under deep hypnosis, report having chosen specific families for emotional and spiritual reasons. The choice of grandparents in this context would not be a simple continuation of the family lineage, but an intentional decision linked to memories from past lives, bonds of learning, or the reciprocation of love. If this topic catches your attention, it's likely you've already felt this type of special bond with someone in your family. And if this content resonates with you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. This helps us continue to bring relevant topics to those seeking to understand life's invisible connections with clarity and respect. Now, let's explore how these revelations came to light and what they say about the continuity of the soul. One of the most well-known approaches to this phenomenon came to light during investigations conducted with thousands of people in altered states of consciousness. In these accounts, individuals described in rich detail the moment when, before birth, they observed various possible families. The choice of grandparents in this context was imbued with purpose. Often they reported recognizing in their grandparents old companions from past journeys with whom they shared joys, sorrows, and promises that remained alive beyond physical death. In many of these accounts, the image of grandparents emerged as spiritual guardians who, in another life, were children, parents, friends, or even teachers. This exchange of roles between incarnations reinforces the idea that family life is a deeply cyclical experience, where bonds are renewed in different forms. The most interesting aspect is that these memories don't arise from external suggestion, but spontaneously. People describe scenes, emotions, and decisions made before conception, with details that challenge any rational explanation based solely on genetics or chance. Some report seeing an energy field where they visualize their future grandparents and feel a natural attraction, as if that reunion were an essential part of their mission on Earth. In certain cases, they even state that one of the main reasons for their reincarnation was to provide learning, healing, or support for their grandparents. This completely transforms how we understand family roles. The grandchild doesn't just come to be cared for, but to care as well, often on subtle, emotional, or spiritual levels that aren't visible on the surface of daily life. These experiences began to form a pattern among various accounts collected in clinical contexts and rigorously documented. The repetition of similar themes among people from different cultures, languages, and beliefs indicates that this is not merely imagination or wishful thinking. When a grandmother says she feels her grandchild saved her, or that he has a look that seems to know everything, she may not be exaggerating. It could be that that soul, in fact, returned with a specific purpose to be by her side. Researchers who follow these accounts suggest that this spiritual choice occurs in a space between lives, where the soul reflects on what it needs to learn or teach, and decides where and with whom this will be possible. In this process, grandparents become fundamental pieces of this journey. The idea that grandchildren choose their grandparents might seem improbable to those who have never reflected on reincarnation, but there's no need for blind belief. Just observe your own life more closely. There are bonds that are born ready-made, glances that immediately recognize each other, words that effortlessly touch the heart. Many seniors have felt this but didn't know how to explain it. Now, by considering this new evidence, perhaps that feeling makes more sense. What these stories show is that family can be much more than a coincidence of birth. It can be a reunion of souls who have known each other for a long time, in a continuous cycle of support, growth, and silent affection. This changes how we view aging and family bonds. When a child enters an older person's life, they bring not only joy and renewal, but also deep reflections on time, cycles, and enduring affections. Many grandparents report feeling that a grandchild's birth arrived at an exact moment, as if life had sent that soul to fill something that was open. This sense of synchronicity is one of the elements that reinforces the theory of conscious choice before birth. The child doesn't arrive by chance, but as part of a larger plan, where they and their grandparents reunite to fulfill unfinished emotional tasks. This type of connection often expresses itself in simple gestures, like the way the child snuggles into their grandparents' lap, or smiles just upon seeing them, creating a feeling of reunion that silently touches the heart's memory. The most surprising thing is that, according to many accounts obtained in regression sessions, the souls involved know exactly what they are doing. There is a consciousness that guides decisions on the spiritual plane, allowing the soul to choose who can offer the ideal conditions for its development. And this isn't limited to parents. Often the choice falls upon grandparents, who will be fundamental figures in providing security, wisdom, or a new chance for shared experience. In certain accounts, the grandchild's soul claims to have chosen that family because one of the grandparents had asked for a new opportunity to correct mistakes from a past life. In others, the reunion was motivated by a love so profound that physical separation wouldn't be enough to completely separate them. Reincarnation then transforms into rebonding. These revelations also have practical implications. When an older person understands that a grandchild's presence might be part of a deeper plan, the relationship between them takes on another dimension. It's no longer just about playing, caring, or giving gifts, but about being aware that every gesture has a spiritual impact. This doesn't require any extraordinary effort, but rather more attentive listening, a more complete presence. Understanding that there's meaning behind that bond can lead the grandparent to value shared time more, to take better care of their own health, to be present, and to realize that aging is not the end of a story, but the middle of a shared journey between souls who recognize each other. This gives new meaning to family life. In many of these studies, grandchildren reported that, upon choosing their grandparents, they knew of the challenges that would come with the earthly life experience. They didn't choose for comfort, but for learning. This includes grandparents with limitations, illnesses, or emotional difficulties. The soul's choice, in this case, reflects spiritual maturity and an intention for mutual growth. By reuniting with a grandparent who was an old teacher, for example, the soul may wish to help them overcome something they still carry. Thus, the interaction between grandchild and grandparent becomes more than affection. It's an opportunity for healing for both. This perspective offers comfort to many older adults who feel limited or insecure in their ability to contribute. Perhaps simply being there, with presence and love, is already an essential part of this planned reunion. By observing the behavior of some children, it's possible to notice signs that support these ideas. There are grandchildren who, even when very young, utter phrases like "I knew you already," or demonstrate knowing details about their grandparents' lives that were never taught to them. Others show such an immediate and intense connection that it defies any logical explanation. Conventional science doesn't yet have answers for this, but spirituality offers a lens that allows us to embrace these occurrences with less astonishment and more understanding. When older adults recognize these signs, they begin to feel more valued, realizing that their role goes beyond what they imagined. They cease to be mere caregivers and become spiritual partners to their own grandchildren on a journey that transcends the logic of time. There are also accounts of older adults who, after losing a loved one, feel that they have returned in the form of a grandchild. The connection is so intense and filled with familiarity that it can be deeply moving. These cases are not only comforting but also transformative. They help older adults cope with grief in a lighter way, understanding that separation may not be definitive. In these situations, the birth of a grandchild is seen as a gift from life, a sign that true love does not break, it merely changes form. This perception brings hope, purpose, and new energy to live old age with more presence. For many, it's also a way to understand that even cycles of pain have continuity and meaning, and that no connection is truly lost when it comes from the soul. Considering these experiences, many begin to see life with greater breadth. Instead of viewing aging as an ending, they start to perceive it as fertile ground where significant reunions take place. The arrival of a grandchild in this context is more than a family event. It's an opportunity to conclude something that began long ago, perhaps in another existence. When an older person understands that they might be experiencing a reunion of souls, this awareness transforms how they value each moment. A simple glance, shared laughter, or a casual conversation become parts of a much deeper bond. Reincarnation, when viewed through this lens, isn't a distant mystery, but a possible explanation for love that seems to be born already mature. In addition to spiritual accounts, some evidence is emerging from studies conducted with children who recall past lives. Reputable institutions have documented cases where these children recognize deceased relatives, precisely describe places they've never visited, and demonstrate specific affections for older family members. These records reinforce the idea that there is a continuity of the soul across incarnations, and that emotional bonds play a determining role in these choices. For older adults, this type of evidence can be a balm. Knowing that the grandchild they love so dearly may have been a long-standing soul companion awakens a feeling of gratitude. They realize that, even with the limitations of age, their presence remains essential, as it represents a point of connection between generations. It's important to understand that these ideas do not require blind adherence or the abandonment of personal beliefs. On the contrary, they open space for reflection and for developing a new perspective on aging and family ties. The simple act of considering this possibility already modifies how many grandparents relate to their grandchildren. They begin to see childhood not just as a phase of growth, but as a sacred time of reunion and continuity. And this not only strengthens the bond, but also redefines the role of older adults in society. Instead of being seen as those who are leaving active life, grandparents become guardians of wisdom, transmitted not only through words, but also through the invisible bonds that connect souls. Another point emerging from these investigations is the concept of a shared mission. In many accounts, grandchildren state that they chose their grandparents because they knew that together they would play an important role in each other's lives. Sometimes this mission is silent, such as simply bringing joy, listening, and companionship. In others, it's more intense, like supporting a depressed grandparent or helping a grandmother rediscover the meaning of life. The mission doesn't have to be grand to be valuable. For those in their senior years, recognizing that there is still purpose in their existence is extremely significant. The idea that grandchildren didn't arrive by chance, but as part of a larger plan, brings a sense of relevance that often gets lost with the passing years and social distancing. It's also worth noting how this perspective can aid in reconstructing strained family ties. There are cases where grandparents, due to life circumstances, have become estranged from their children and feel guilt about it. The birth of a grandchild in this case represents not only a new chance, but also a sign of spiritual reconciliation. Even if it's not openly discussed, the grandchild's mere presence can serve as a bridge between hearts that have drifted apart. Spirituality doesn't impose ready-made answers, but offers paths to understanding. And the idea that a grandchild might have chosen their grandparents before birth could be exactly that path for older adults to understand that there is still room for love, repair, and new beginnings, even if words fail or time seems short. It's worth remembering that the experience of aging doesn't have to be solitary or devoid of meaning. When one understands that invisible bonds are at work behind ordinary life, everything gains more color. Every visit, every hug, and every conversation can be seen as part of a long-planned reunion. For many grandparents, this idea brings comfort and strengthens self-esteem. Instead of feeling forgotten or left aside, they begin to see themselves as essential pieces in the grand tapestry of human relationships. The arriving grandchild, with their bright eyes and spontaneous manner, may be carrying an ancient memory of affection, and the grandparent who welcomes them may simply be continuing a story that began long before this life, in a sequence of encounters that defy oblivion. Even among those who don't believe in reincarnation, there's a growing recognition that certain family connections are deeper than we can rationally explain. When an older person feels that a grandchild has brought them new life, new breath, or simply a reason to continue, it's because there's something very powerful operating in that relationship. Science may not yet fully understand what happens in these bonds, but experience shows that the love between grandparents and grandchildren carries a force capable of transcending sorrows, losses, and distances. By looking through this broader lens, older adults gain more than spiritual answers. They gain the chance to value the present moment more intensely, knowing that time shared with a grandchild is not only sweet, but also sacred and essential for both. This understanding also inspires new ways of aging. Instead of resigning themselves to the idea that their time to contribute has passed, older adults begin to see that their presence is needed on a much more subtle level than the physical. The simple act of being emotionally available, listening attentively, welcoming with patience, and smiling genuinely already represents a great contribution. These attitudes, which are often undervalued in a fast-paced society, carry immense spiritual weight. The grandchild who chose to be near their grandparent didn't just come to seek stories or a lap, but also to offer and awaken what is best in that seasoned soul. And this mutual awakening is one of the most discreet, yet also most transformative beauties of family life. Some older adults report that, even without knowing about these spiritual concepts, they always felt something special when holding their grandchildren. It was as if something ancient was reconnected, as if that tiny being carried memories that time couldn't erase. These sensations, though subtle, are confirmed by many accounts worldwide. The impression that we've known someone before, even if they're a newborn, can be an indication of a soul bond. And this offers a new key to understanding life, realizing that the most striking encounters are not always new, but rather continuations of something that already existed, and which finds a new form in this life to move forward, healing, teaching, and strengthening both sides of the bond. In practice, this perception can influence how grandparents interact with their grandchildren on a daily basis. When one understands that the bond goes beyond blood, time spent together gains more value. Older adults may feel more motivated to be present, to share experiences, to transmit values not as an obligation, but as part of a shared mission. Small moments like a walk in the park, watching a cartoon side by side, or offering kind advice become part of something much larger. Older adults, by realizing this, begin to see that their role remains vital. They are not just passing the baton to the next generation, but co-creating a more conscious future based on a love that transcends time. Ultimately, reflecting on the possibility that grandchildren choose their grandparents before birth is more than a spiritual curiosity. It's an invitation to rethink the meaning of relationships, aging, and presence. Older adults, by opening space for this idea, rediscover within themselves a strength that perhaps was dormant, the certainty that their life matters. And it matters not only for what they did in the past, but for what they still represent now. Every gesture of affection, every piece of advice, every welcoming gaze can be fulfilling a function greater than imagined. It's not about proving or convincing anyone, but about offering a broader, gentler, and more respectful view of the bonds that truly sustain life in all its phases. If this video stirred something in you, please share it with someone who also feels this type of family connection. Often, these ideas serve as a point of reconnection between generations who love each other but don't know how to express it. And if you'd like to continue receiving reflections like this, subscribe to the channel. The time you dedicate to listening, thinking, and feeling can transform not only your life, but also that of those who walk beside you. Because in the end, what truly matters isn't understanding everything, but being present with those who chose us, yesterday, today, or even before everything began.